All right, welcome to another RTD Live Talk. Excited to be back with you. And so get started a little bit late, but as always, we're here. And I'm excited to have a returning guest, Mr. Doug Casey. And so before we get to that screen, we want to give it a second, acknowledge a couple people's presence, make sure we are streaming, and then we can get into this interview, somewhat of a live interview, give you a chance, Mr. Casey, to share your thoughts on where we're at and where we're going, and then give the callers hopefully a chance to ask you questions directly. So that being the case, Mr. Doug Casey, welcome back to RT Live Talk.
Well, thanks, Mike. It's a pleasure. I'm talking to you right now from Buenos Aires, Argentina.
Buenos Aires, Argentina. So it's summertime down there, about to be summertime, so you got much better weather than I have here in Michigan. So definitely I do miss those days where I had a chance to be down there myself. But I'm curious. Of course, everyone knows Doug Casey, but for those that may not know, because I'm trying to reach a different demographic, so can you give us a quick 2-3 line sentence as to who you are and how you've arrived at this point in your career, just in case, for those that may not know you?
Okay. I guess I'm best known for writing books. I wrote a book called The International Man, which was a guidebook to how to make the most of your personal freedom and financial opportunity around the world. And among other things, it was the largest selling book in the history of Rhodesia, which is a record that'll never be broken. And then I wrote Crisis Investing, which was number one on the New York Times list for like 19 weeks and on the list for most of the year, and several books since then. But what I do for a living is I speculate in the markets. That's basically what I do for a living. So, and I have a website, a blog, internationalman.com, where every day we have a relevant article from me or somebody else about the world economy and money and making money and internationalizing yourself and things of that nature. So that's it in a nutshell, Mike.
Sounds good. So I appreciate you for sharing that. And so what I'm curious to find out is, so we're approaching a new decade, and I'm assuming you let me know because you've had a couple years ahead of me as far as this journey called life. And so would you say that this is probably the most turbulent times, give or take the global connection of our monetary system and political chaos happening all around the world? You know, what's your assessment on the current environment we're in now?
Well, my view is that the U.S. is going into the most turbulent time we've had, not just since the last depression of 1929 to 1946. This is going to be the biggest thing since the war between the states. It's going to be, what we're looking at is absolutely a catastrophic economic upset, probably a catastrophic political upset, maybe a sociological catastrophe besides that. Maybe it'll be a military thing if this spills over. Who knows who the U.S. might attack next? Start a war with China, start a war with Iran, with Russia. We've got soldiers in 100 countries around the world, so any of them could be a tripwire. So this is very serious business, but it'll be triggered, I think, by the economy.
By the economy. Now, what is your personal assessment, given the fact you're an international man, so you've been around, you've witnessed a couple of different political seasons in this country especially. What is your thoughts and what is your assessment on President Trump? A lot of people think he's coming in to, unfortunately, be a savior for some people, but then some people think he's deliberately placed to bring this default into play, or what's your personal assessment on President Trump?
Well, okay. People either love Trump or they hate him. And these people in the blue counties, so-called, and the red counties seem to hate each other. They can't even talk to each other. It's like they're watching two totally different movies. They have totally different views of reality. So what we're looking at is the potential for a civil war in the U.S. So this is really very, very serious. Now, Trump. Trump is a narcissist. He's got no philosophical core. He's got no central real beliefs. He plays everything by the seat of his pants, okay? And he's not very knowledgeable. He doesn't read books at all. So I guess everything he learns is from what he picks up on television or what people tell him. None of this is very good. However, do I support Trump? Well, look, he knows nothing about economics. He knows nothing about foreign affairs. He's dangerous, although he does say he wants to bring the troops home. Whether he will or not, I doubt. But, okay, why do I kind of support him? That said, having said all these things, why do I kind of support him? Because he's a cultural conservative, okay? He's not an economic or a political conservative. He's a cultural conservative. In other words, he wants to see the U.S. go back to a time when there was no antagonism between groups or less antagonism between groups. When things were like on those 50s and 60s TV shows, Father Knows Best and Ozzie and Harriet and stuff like that. He wants to go back to an America of apple pie, Chevrolet, and motherhood, and things of that nature.
Now, sorry to cut you off.
That's why people like him. It's not because of his political or economic philosophy. He doesn't have any of those.
Yeah.
So that's my view on Trump. It's going to end badly, though, because the Democrats and a lot of Republicans absolutely hate him. It's unclear to me why. Maybe it's because he's a cultural conservative. I don't know.
Yeah.
But this is a witch's brew.
So a part of the thing. So your initial side of things was in your personal opinion is that he's not too smart or savvy or whatever. And so assuming you have your reasons as to why that is, but yet for someone who's a hotel empire, real estate mogul, whatever, would you say he understands debt pretty well and the benefits of it, and how would that benefit him as president of the United States of America? Because I'm assuming every president leaves better than they come in, and he's president for some reason, I would assume.
I think it's ego. That's the only reason that he's president. It's because he's an egomaniac. And I don't know if he understands debt or not. He says he wants negative interest rates, which is economically idiotic and destructive because he's always been in debt his whole life. Look, he's the high-stakes gambler. Everything about him says risk taker, take the gamble. And I'm not sure if that's really a good thing when you're head of a declining empire armed with nuclear weapons and the biggest military in the world. He's capable of almost anything, unpredictably.
Interesting. So I'm assuming I want to touch off because you mentioned the end of an empire. So that's a part of this little title I have for today: the end of the American empire. And so we've witnessed, I guess, over 100 years of having the reserve currency status. So I would imagine that as a part of this, the ending of this empire, it has a lot to do with the shift out of our world reserve status into something else. Or what are some things you would label as a reason for the end of this empire, if that is the case?
Well, you're absolutely right about that, Mike. Look, the dollar is an IOU nothing on the part of a bankrupt government, okay? And the U.S., the central bank, is printing up dollars by the scores of billions every month. And there's not even a current emergency right now. They're flooding the financial markets with dollars. And that's what's keeping the stock market and the bond market and the real estate market up. It's all this money flowing in here. And the problem with it, there's many problems, but one problem is that's why the rich are getting richer, because the rich get to stand next to that fire hose of money coming out of the Federal Reserve in Washington. It goes into their pockets first and into the financial markets first. So this is kind of a sociological time bomb. That's a real problem, but there's more to it than that. And it's that internationally, as you pointed out, the dollar is kind of the world's currency at this point, but it isn't gonna be. It's turning into a hot potato where the major export of the U.S. is dollars. And the Russians and the Chinese in particular, I don't believe most government announcements, but there's usually some truth to them. They're huge buyers of gold. Why? They're trying to get rid of dollars because it's the currency of their adversary or maybe their enemy, the US. And anything that they buy or sell using dollars across borders has to clear through New York. They don't want to do that. But at the same time, nobody trusts yuan or rubles. So there's two things that are going to happen. One is that I suspect both the yuan and the ruble are going to be backed by gold and exchangeable for gold, number one. And number two, I think that we're going to see gold used again as day-to-day money in the next 20 years. At least that's, I think there's a high possibility of that happening because all of these currencies in the world are melting down. They're all toilet paper.
Now, as far as gold being used in day-to-day transactions or whatever, I'm assuming amongst nations to settle international trade, or will governments put themselves in a tight pinch by then giving national currencies with some type of gold backing again, which only will limit them to their ability to grow and expand and invade our lives. So I see more of the digital push, like digital back gold or whatever they'll try to spin out. But do you see that digital push as being a part of this equation?
Yeah, it'll definitely be gold backed for governments to settle between each other. But governments always treat their subjects like milk cows. I mean, as far as the U.S. government's concerned, you and I are nothing but pawns on the board to be manipulated. We're milk cows to be milked. And if they're really desperate, they'll treat us like beef cows. So this idea that the U.S. government is your friend and your protector, this is complete nonsense. It's the opposite of the truth. So yeah, maybe for that reason, and the fact that the U.S. government's bankrupt and they're going to try to raise taxes to get money into their coffers, they're going to print up more dollars. I mean, these $2 trillion per year deficits, where's that going to come from? Well, they're going to print up money to pass out to people. So yeah, maybe not in the United States, at least until after the current system collapses. What scares me, though, is that after a system collapses, things usually get worse. That's the stuff of revolutions when a system collapses. But I'm afraid the U.S. is on the way to a system collapse. So it's scary.
Yeah, I agree. Now, I'm curious to get your thoughts on the global events occurring right now. You're in Buenos Aires, so right next door in Santiago, the younger generation primarily leading the way in the upheaval there as far as protesting. And everybody's wanting free stuff or less expensive this and that. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on the social unrest. And so we got Bolivia, Colombia is doing something right now, Chile, Lebanon, Hong Kong. I can probably name off a couple more if I knew them off the top of my head. What is that a sign of? What is really going on?
Well, in many ways, the whole world, not just the U.S., is on the edge of a cliff. And I expect that this kind of turmoil could spread around the world. It could be very much like what happened in the late 60s and the early 70s, where there's riots in the street and so forth. Because the economic situation today, the amount of debt in the world that everybody owes everybody else, it's like a daisy chain. Somebody defaults, the next guy defaults, and people that thought they had assets turn out not to have assets anymore. And when that happens, people go wild. And it could happen all over the world. So we're really in the edge of turmoil. Like here in Argentina, Very nice country to live in, very pleasant, very, very, very cheap. Um, it's just amazing how inexpensive everything is here in Argentina. I'd say a third, maybe a quarter of what you expect for the same thing to buy in the U.S. Um, the problem is that these Argentines have elected a dogmatic, actually crazy socialist. They reelected Christina Kirchner. And who knows what she's going to do. It'll be stupid, whatever it is. She's the vice president, but she's the power behind the throne of the actual president.
Yeah.
So, and the worst thing, Mike, is that the U.S. is following Argentina's lead. In other words, the U.S. is no longer a shining example for the rest of the world. We're following the example of a declining banana republic. So it's scary. It's listen. I like watching this stuff on my widescreen TV from my farm. I don't want to watch it when the riots start here, there, and everywhere out my front window. That isn't going to be very pleasant.
Yeah. Now I would be curious to find out your thoughts because I've seen different articles or whatnot about how China is looking to expand their influence. So they've made some deals with the Argentinian government and pretty much every government around the world. They are somehow, some way lending and getting themselves involved in their political affairs there. And so do you think that's a part of the next transition with this Belt and Road Initiative and all the development that is coming that's led by the Asian region?
Yeah, there's no question in my mind about it that this century is going to be the Chinese century. And their One Road, One Belt initiative is going to have huge effects all over the world. In fact, they're here in South America, but more than anything, they're in Central Asia and actually most of all in Africa, where they've lent these African governments, all of which are terminally corrupt. They've lent them a lot of money to build ports, airports, railroads, all kinds of stuff like that. And I don't think the Africans are going to be able to pay any of that back. Mm-mm. So the Chinese are going to own that stuff. Mm-hmm. They're going to repossess it. And I think what's going to happen is just what a high Chinese official said a few years ago. Their plans are to move 300 million, that's 300 million Chinese to Africa in the years to come. Now, that's going to be big trouble for everybody. But on the other hand, you're going to find scores of millions, maybe hundreds of millions, as it turns out in the future, of Africans moving to Europe. So we're in a period of gigantic mass migrations all around the world. This is the biggest thing since the collapse of the Roman Empire, as far as movement of people is concerned. So this is going to be really interesting to watch, but I'd rather watch it from a moon base or something like that up front, because it's going to be chaotic.
Yeah. Now, so this integration or global redistribution of population, whatever it's going to be called, it sounds interesting, but if it's led by the Asian region, and on top of all the surveillance stuff, I'm hearing more about facial recognition. So it will not come with more privacy and more civil liberties. And so it's going to be very repressive, wouldn't you say? It's not. I mean, it sounds like it's. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right. It's going to be very oppressive because now China and Sweden are the two leading countries in this, but everybody pays for things, buys and sells things on their cell phone. And the next step will be governments will issue digital currencies, okay? And when that happens, the government will know absolutely everything that you buy and sell and what you have, because cash won't really exist anymore. Mm-hmm. And I'm a big believer in cash.
Yeah.
So this is a very, very disturbing trend, and it's going to happen everywhere, I'm afraid. I don't like to use my cell phone In fact, my cell phone isn't even charged right now. For me, it's for emergency purposes only when I'm on the road.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Yeah, I'm not. I mean, apart from the computer access and all the things I do behind the scenes, I appreciate having a chance to, or having had a chance to take my cell phone battery out of my phone. But nowadays they're making it so that they're stuck in there, and all that comes with it, and everything now has a backdoor to it anyway. So it's no privacy, and it's all the problems with that. And so I'm curious to get your thoughts on how this year ends. So today there was the FOMC meeting. I didn't have a chance to get caught up on what the results were, but assuming I heard somebody tweet something about Jerome Powell referencing 4% inflation might be a target. So I don't know if they're going to move their measuring stick. But, do you see there being a market rate cut immediately in 2020 and then that to spur things on? Or how will 2020 start to you possibly?
Well, as you probably know, I believe that central banks, like the Federal Reserve, serve no useful purpose except for the government, and they should be abolished. They're unnecessary. We should use gold as money.
Now, I'm sorry to cut you off. Some people here may say, "Well, what about silver?" Because a lot of people, as far as the ounces and heavier tonnage, can't really afford gold directly, or they could if they wanted. But we got a lot of silver bugs here, so would you put that in the same category?
Well, silver's always been used as money too. There's no problem with that. The problem is when you have a dual monetary standard and somebody tries to fix the price of gold against silver. I mean, for many, many years, the ratio between gold and silver was 1 ounce of gold equals 17 ounces of silver, or thereabouts. Well, now it's about 85. Mm-hmm. You can't fix price control any two commodities. Fixing the exchange rate between gold and silver is as dumb as trying to fix the exchange rate between hogs and corn. They fluctuate. No, silver can be used as money, and they can both be used as money at once. You have to have two prices that might change daily, the silver price and the gold price. Pay for either one, and they change from day to day. I'm all for silver being also used as, you can use anything as money. Mm-hmm. It's just a question of what's most convenient, consistent. It's fine to use silver as money. And as a speculation, silver is better than gold, actually, for many reasons. It's got more upside potential because it's a much smaller market. It's more volatile. And in real terms, it's a lot cheaper than gold. There are very few silver miners in the world right now that can mine silver profitably, for instance. No, I'm very friendly towards silver as a speculator, and there's no reason why it shouldn't also be used as a metal, as long as it's not fixed in price against gold. No problems.
Fair enough. Now, you've referenced a couple times, you label yourself as a speculator. And so my audience may not be too familiar with that from a entrepreneurial / business mindset type of perception. So can you elaborate on that more as to, how you label yourself a speculator and what does that entail, and how can perhaps some smaller individuals who have very little resources probably also speculate?
Right. A speculator is very different from a trader who's always in and out of the markets trying to second guess them. Trying to trade markets, I feel, is a formula for disaster for almost everybody. Not everybody, but almost everybody. I'm not a gambler. I love to play poker, but being a speculator is very different from gambling. A speculator, ideally, is somebody that takes advantage of politically caused distortions in the marketplace. For many years, the U.S. government fixed the price of gold and it fixed the price of silver at unreasonably low levels. And so they both exploded in price when it became impossible for the government to do that. Now a speculator tries to position himself to take advantage of government stupidity. And of course, the more the government intervenes in markets, the more speculative opportunities there are. If we lived in a free market society, it'd be very hard to be a speculator because there wouldn't be distortions that you could capitalize on. So what you might be asking yourself right now, okay, give me a good speculation today. Okay, this is an area of specialty of mine. It's mining stocks. Crappy little mining exploration and development stocks. In real terms, they're at about the cheapest level in history. And at the same time, I think both gold and silver and other commodities like copper are going to go into a huge bull market. And uranium, there's a whole bunch of them. They're all very, very cheap right now. Historically, close, not gold, it's reasonable, but not historically ultra cheap. So buying the shares of these little companies that explore for and develop these things and mine them, that's the third category, the ones that actually found something and mine it. This market, when it moves, historically, moves 10 to 1, all the stocks. A lot of stocks move 100 to 1. Some stocks go 1,000 for 1. Right now, nobody cares about them. Nobody's interested in them. It's the time to buy. You might have to wait a year, 2 years. But the other problem is that most of these stocks are crap. They'll never find anything. They're burning matches. It's a very dangerous area. So you need expertise. You need knowledge, which most people don't have. But that's what I'm doing. Another thing I'm doing is some of these second and third generation cryptocurrencies, not Bitcoin. I'm very interested in Bitcoin. I like Bitcoin for a lot of reasons. But some of these other cryptocurrencies, most of them are crap too, incidentally. They're frauds, they're promotions. But there are some of them that could really be very, very valuable and hot and could be also 100 to 1,000 to 1 shots. So those are two things that I think are both really interesting to look at if we want to talk about speculations.
What's your thoughts on this more so situation here in the U.S. especially where cannabis, and so there's CBD everything, there's hemp everything. I mean, there's so much opportunity now in that the legalization of cannabis and all the cannabinoids with that. Is that something you see having some promise perhaps?
Well, as a business, okay, I think it's going to be a pretty good business because not just CBD, but there's 110 or whatever it is, 113 other cannabinoids that haven't been researched thoroughly and might be equally good as CBD. I'm a believer in CBD from my personal experience. So as a business, yeah, I think it'd be great. But as a speculation, that bubble has broken. And I say cannabis has been very, very good to me. But that bubble broke. And I still own some they're private companies that will go public, I hope. And I'm going to hit the bid with them as soon as they go out because there's hundreds of publicly traded cannabis companies, and most of them are going to go bust. The field is way too crowded. The peak in these things came a year ago. And I don't want any part in it until, I'm going to wait until the safe has fallen out of the 100-story building where it was and cracks open on the sidewalk. I don't want to try to catch that safe. I don't know if we've hit the bottom yet or not, but the bubble's broken. So watch it, but I wouldn't buy any of these things now.
Yeah, interesting. Now, a moment ago, you were describing the process or your particular methodology towards speculation, and you said that what people lack, they lack knowledge. And so a lot of people don't have nowadays the educational system has dumbed down population to where a lot of people don't have common sense, nevertheless, any type of additional skill set on top of that outside of what they've gotten from school, which is not the greatest. But so from a knowledge standpoint, a lot of people don't have the opportunity to get up and travel and experience life and learn and how to solve problems by putting themselves out there like that. What are some ways you think people can fine-tune their knowledge base in a practical manner right where they're at, no matter where they're watching this from?
Look, what you got to do is read stuff, okay? preferably read books, not just tweets. I mean, that's ridiculous. You don't get any knowledge from tweets. At best, you get a goofy opinion. Read books. Now, what books would I recommend that viewers watch or read, rather? Economics. Most important, simple economics book ever written is called Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. It's only 120 pages. It is required reading. So, and it's on the internet, free, I think. So that's one book for sure. I've written books which I think are excellent. So you can Google me and look at those. The novels that I've written so far are very educational, but in the form of a novel. And some people find it easy. We all do. It's easier to read a story than it is to read a textbook.
Yeah.
So read Speculator and Drug Lord. They're both very good. There's lots of good stuff to read. Of course, it's Pareto's law. 80% of everything is crap. And even out of the 20% that's okay, you should really only read 20% of that 20%. Because there's a million new books, literally more than a million actually, new books published every year. You can't read all this stuff. So you've got to be very selective. Right. So Economics in One Lesson, read that. Very important. Everybody should read it several times. Another book that I think is excellent, also free on the internet, is called The Market for Liberty. Work of genius. People should read that as well, definitely. And then I got to give you a commercial. Read my books. They're actually quite good. At least if you like what I've been saying, you'll like the books even better.
Yeah, I put them up right here above my head so people watching definitely can see it. So interesting. So knowledge is key. And unfortunately, a lot of our generation, because books have been taken out of the school, and they wouldn't never recommend those books you recommend, because that gives people a way to be creative and to begin critically thinking. And that's a problem for keeping things dumbed down the way it is. So yeah, apart from being a parent, encouraging your children to do so, that's the best option you have. So as we get ready to draw towards the end, I want to kind of open it up a little bit and see if there's any questions out there, because I want to be respectful of your time. And so let me find out via chat. So the chat is above my head right here, over here. Highlight at Rethinking the Dollar if you have a question for Doug directly. And then also the phone lines are open if you'd like to call in and ask a question. And we'll definitely be short and concise with your question or your thought. And then we will get ready to dial back. And so I want you to be able to enjoy the rest of your day down in Buenos Aires. So while we wait on a question or thought, I'm curious to find out more about Argentina. So I had as I mentioned, I lived there years and years ago and was there right when it went from 8-1. As soon as I left, it went to 16-1, and now I think it's 60-1. So do you foresee that 59 of 61 exchange ratio playing into the year at that, or will it go even higher?
Oh, look, they're going to destroy the peso. The Argentines are in a competition with the Brazilians to our north to destroy pesos, to destroy their currencies. And I think at this point, the Argentines are ahead. The new government down here has said they want to increase. Inflation's already running 50%, but these morons say we got to print up more money to pass out to the people that supported us to get us elected so we can steal more money. I mean, nobody knows for sure, but Christina Kirchner, it's said, has stolen about $10 billion, most of it in $100 bills in steamer trunks. This is really amazing.
Yeah.
These people are bold. So they want to print up lots more pesos. No, they're going to destroy it. If you come down here again this time next year, I expect the exchange rate's going to be 200-1. And then it'll go to 1,000-1. And I mean, these people, when it comes to money, they got no understanding. But remember, the Federal Reserve is going to destroy the U.S. dollar too. So if anybody's smart, they'd get out of dollars. There's only one way the dollar is better, and that is if we have a credit collapse and all that debt is defaulted on and all those dollars represented by that debt are wiped out. then the dollar will be worth more for a while. But if that happens, then they'll redouble their efforts to print more. So there's no way out. What people should be doing is buy gold and buy silver. I'd say buy copper too, but it takes too much copper to be worth anything.
Yeah. And so we have a question here. Someone asked Doug about a second passport. It says, Doug, should Americans have a passport just in case?
Yes, everybody should. Absolutely everybody should. Because remember, your passport is necessary to leave the U.S. Otherwise, you're going to be trapped like a lobster. Mm-hmm. And the U.S., that passport is the property of the U.S. government. Mm-hmm. So they can take it away from you or cancel it at any time. So you've got to have a second or a third passport. One of the easiest passports to get is the Argentine passport. You only have to live down here 6 months of the year for 2 years. And you can become an Argentine citizen. And it's a very good passport. Visa-free travel to like 150 countries. It's quite good. And it'll be a wonderful experience. Now, did you try to get one when you were living down here, Mike?
No, I didn't. And so I was there for longer. I was there for enough to meet that criteria, but I didn't know it was relatively that. But this next 2020, I'll definitely be down there. So I'll definitely reach out to you. So because that's something I always wanted, and it was one of the things where it didn't happen that way. But yeah, it's not too late.
I'll look forward to seeing you when that happens.
Definitely. So it looks like there's no more real questions out there. So we're going to get ready to dial back. I'm very appreciative of you taking time to join us and giving us your assessment on where we're heading in the future. And definitely, hopefully next year, if I actually make it down there, we can do a live stream together or something like that. I think it'd be fun. And so with that being the case, Mr. Doug Casey, it has been great having you on. I'm going to put up, let me see here. I put up your books one more time over here so people can see. And I'll actually put the website into the chat so people can go check it out. And definitely some great reading. And so one of the things you mentioned is knowledge is key. And so getting some information outside of what you get from mainstream TV can definitely do a lot better than anything else.
And Mike, don't forget to post internationalman.com, which we have an excellent article every day, which I think people will find of interest. Actually.
All right, I will do that. And also, I appreciate you connecting me with I forgot his name, one of the writers there, primary writers there, and so we had a great conversation. So I appreciate that as well. So,
was that Nick Giambruno? Nick Giambruno you talked to?
Yeah, it was Nick. Yes, it had a great conversation. He was going from Colombia to down in Buenos Aires, I think. So I'm not sure where he's at now, but
he's in BA. Okay. In fact, I'm going to see him tonight.
All right, well, tell him Mike said hello, and definitely looking forward to connecting with him again. And so, but other than that, Mr. Doug Casey, that's pretty much it, I guess, for today. I appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to sit down with us here, RTD, Rethinking the Dollar. And as always, if you've enjoyed this interview/discussion, make sure you guys give it a thumbs up and take this video, share it with your family and friends. And if you want to be a blessing to the channel to see more videos like this, click that Patreon button up at the top or at the bottom of this and become a Patreon subscriber. And you'll have a chance to be a blessing to the channel and get more content. So once again, thanks for tuning in. I'll see you guys later this evening. Peace. Hey there, sorry for this interruption, but I wanted to bring something to your attention. If you've been enjoying this live stream, why don't you partner with me and be a support to the channel via Patreon membership for just a minimum of $5 a month. All you have to do is scroll down beneath this video here, click the Patreon link, then consider donating as little as $5 a month towards the channel. A little bit of crumbs can go a long way, and I appreciate your support. Now, let's get back to this live stream.